Good day. Today, I'm going to answer some problems about DNA profiling. But first, let us define what is DNA profiling. DNA profiling is a forensic technique in criminal investigations comparing criminal suspects' profiles to DNA evidence so as to assess likelihood of their involvement in the crime. It is also used in parentage testing to establish immigration eligibility and in genealogical and medical research. DNA profiling is a forensic technique in criminal investigations comparing criminal suspects' profiles to DNA evidence so as to assess likelihood of their involvement in the crime. It is also used in parentage testing to establish immigration eligibility and in genealogical and medical research. Here are the problems. Problem number 1. The DNA fingerprints were made from blood samples taken from a puppy, and 4 possible sires of this puppy in an effort to determine the puppy's pedigree. According to this information, which sire was probably the father of this puppy? So my answer is letter C because they have puppy and letter C have the same profile of DNA or they have the same sets of grid lines. Second problem. The picture shows a segment of DNA from a cat. Which of this is most likely the kitten of this cat? The kitten of this cat is letter D. Number 3. Mrs. Smith has a baby named Tyra. She believes one of two men can be the father of her child. A paternity test is done and the results are shown above. Which of the two men are baby Tyra's father? So my answer is dad number 2 because baby and dad number 2 has the same profile or they have the same grid lines. Number 4. Lieutenant Ross is investigating a murder scene. The felon was scratched by his victim, and some of his skin cells were found under the victim's fingernails. A DNA test was performed. Which of the suspect is the murderer? The murderer is the second suspect. Number 5. Susie was assaulted in an alley and is a victim of rape. The police collect sample of sperm that was left at the crime scene and now have 3 suspects in custody. Which of the suspects raped Susie? The suspect is suspect number 1. Number 6. Millionaire Mr. Big has just died. He has left behind a wife, daughter, and a large inheritance. The news of his death has brought forth 2 men who claim to be the long-lost son of Mr. and Mrs. Big. Before Mr. and Mrs. Big were married, they had an illegitimate child and had placed him up for adoption. They had tried to find him after they become wealthy but had no luck in locating him. A DNA sample was taken from Mrs. Pig, the big daughter, and the 2 men who claim to be the long-lost son, which if any of the men are telling the truth. Son 1 is telling the truth, and son 1 is the son of Mr. and Mrs. Pig. Last, number 7. Mr. and Mrs. Jones just gave birth to fraternal twins, Bob and Jane. Unfortunately, the nurse has confused the Jones twins with 4 other babies. The doctor took samples of DNA from each of the babies and Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Which of the 6 children are Mr. and Mrs. Jones twins? Child 1 and 5 is the babies or the twins of Mr. and Mrs. Jones.